Welcome to the eShopperReviews podcast, episode 2. This is the podcast for May 2021. I'm Jen Ip.
And I'm Jake McNeil.
For those new to this podcast, eShopperReviews is a subreddit on reddit.com where Jake reviews games on the Nintendo Switch platform, and you can find this subreddit at the URL reddit.com/r/eShopperReviews. We currently have over 1,300 reviews and counting, and we are supported by your donations on our Patreon, which you can find at patreon.com/eShopperReviews. This month's sponsors are Lee, Andy Miller, Stove, Reddit user Wonder Ponder, Ilya Zarev, Eli Goodman, and KC. Thank you all for helping to keep the reviews coming. Now, on to the discussion topics for today. We have a new logo. And this was one that Jake decided to make in the middle of the night.
Really? We're going to talk about that. How do I want to put this?
You couldn't sleep at night and you decided to work on the logo.
Yes, that's technically true.
Mm-hmm.
We'd both been talking about wanting to make some changes to the logo, update the look, get it to look a little more unique and distinctive. And we went over a few different designs, a few different possibilities, and the one that we settled on should hopefully, if we've gotten everything taken care of, got all of our ducks in a row, should be up as of this podcast going live. So now you're looking at it.
Yep, and we also have stickers, which I have been procrastinating on.
No. Don't say that. You don't want to reveal weakness to our listeners.
Oh, come on.
No. You have been lying in wait for this new design to come out so that the stickers will reflect this new design, because we don't want to be giving our patrons old sticker designs.
I mean, I guess you could say I've been waiting for the new logo design. I know you've been talking about it before.
I've talked about it some, yeah.
Okay. But yes, we have a new logo. We have new stickers coming out, and I will actually be posting probably on Reddit what the new stickers will look like.
Well, I thought we were going to be doing a poll.
Maybe. We'll see.
Okay.
So
it's mysterious even to me.
Yes.
I am not aware of the inner workings of our machinery here.
It's almost like I'm not even aware of our inner workings.
Shh, you don't want to reveal weakness to these people. They'll eat you alive.
I don't taste very good, but it's fine.
Time for patron voted game.
We had 2 games that tied this month. New Pokemon Snap and Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 4. And with this being the case, I feel like the tiebreaker is me. I'm the tiebreaker since I'm the one spending the money on the game.
I mean, you could just flip a coin.
But I don't want to do that, especially because, well, I'm certainly interested in both of these games. I'm interested in, generally all of the games that I put up on the poll for people to choose between. It's just they're new games, they're full price games, and I can't always get them at full price because, again, money. But while I'm interested in both of these games, I have to admit I'm more curious about New Pokemon Snap.
I am too, mainly because I remember as a kid I didn't have access to the game in my home. I had
You mean the original
Oh, the
Pokemon
original,
Snap.
yeah. So I had to go to a cousin's house to play it, and I got maybe about 2 hours of playtime, so I am very eager to have access to this new Pokemon Snap.
I did play the original Pokemon Snap. I liked it. I wouldn't say that I loved it. It's my favorite game ever, but I thought it was very good. It was very unique, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they update that formula in this sequel that's been, what is it, 15 or 20 years in the making? It has been a long time since that original Pokemon Snap game.
Okay, so we have news from last month. Although I think some people are wondering what happened to the April podcast.
So we've decided to make a small change to how we introduce these podcasts. The last podcast, our first podcast, we said was the podcast for March, and this is the podcast for May. We didn't skip a month. We just decided it seemed better to make the podcast for the month we're releasing it in than the podcast for the prior month, even though we're talking about stuff for the prior month.
Works for me.
This is how the sausage gets made kind of stuff here.
Okay, so on my little discussion topic list, you mentioned the day Mario dies.
So this was not something I came up with. This was, I don't know, it spontaneously came up from the internet. People kind of gathered around this as the way to call this event. But last year, Nintendo announced that they were releasing a bunch of Mario-themed games for Mario's anniversary. And a few of these games, they basically put a deadline on. They said, these games will not be available after such and such a date. That date was, I believe, March 30th, which means that April 1st became the day Mario dies. Because at that time, Super Mario 3D All-Stars and Super Mario Bros. 35 would no longer be available. Super Mario 3D All-Stars is significant because that is actually a game that sold very well. It was very popular and got a lot of interest. But I kind of think Super Mario Bros. 35 is a bit more significant because that was a game Nintendo released to Nintendo Switch Online users. Is a free game for them if you're already a subscriber. But as of the end of March, beginning of April, that game is no longer playable. Even if you already downloaded the game, you cannot play that game anymore. It no longer exists for the intents and purposes of anyone. So while there are still copies of Super Mario 3D All-Stars out there in the ether, you can still buy them on eBay or Craigslist or whatever, there is no way to play Super Mario Bros. 35 anymore. And I mentioned 2 games because it's a Mario thing, but technically there are 3 because there was a third game that Nintendo pulled from the eShop. They announced they were going to be doing this, and that was Fire Emblem, Shadow Dragon, and the Blade of Light, which is a long title, but basically it is the very first game in the Fire Emblem series, originally released on the Famicom game system in Japan, never brought over to the United States officially. And this game for sale on the eShop was the first time we had an official English localization of the game. There have been fan localizations and there have been remakes of this game, but this is the first and only time that people have had access to an official localization of the original game in the Fire Emblem series. And Nintendo pulled it right off of the eShop at the end of March because it is a limited time exclusive thing, and they apparently decided that they wanted it to be a celebration, which meant that they were no longer making it available to customers after that time, which a lot of people felt was very
mean.
Well, more than mean, it's consumer unfriendly. It's basically it's preying on FOMO. It is basically saying those people who are on the fence over whether or not they want to buy this game, we're going to give them that extra little incentive because maybe they'll figure, maybe I'll want to buy that game in the future and I won't be able to, so I'd better buy it now. And that's going to be the little push that's going to push them into giving Nintendo their dollars. And really cynical and frustrating and really unusual for the industry. Usually it's not common for companies to pull a game from sale or put it on sale for a limited time. And they're basically doing the Disney Vault thing.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Which is also pretty user unfriendly. And I think, and a lot of people think, it sets a very bad precedent. So this is what a lot of people were upset about, and kind of why they coined the day Mario dies thing, because I'm sure that Nintendo doesn't want to be associated with something that kind of sounds a little morbid and all of that. And so maybe this is
with the flagship that is Mario.
Yeah. So this was maybe kind of a little bit of a kind of giving Nintendo encouragement not to make this a regular thing. And Nintendo, it is rumored, we do not have any confirmation of this, but it is rumored that Nintendo might be doing a similar sort of celebration thing for The Legend of Zelda, which celebrates its 35th anniversary this year. And people are dreading the thought that Nintendo might do something similar and have another limited release for this year, because it worked for them last year. Super Mario 3D All-Stars sold extremely well, and a large part of the reason that people think that is the case is because they did this limited release thing.
I mean, if there are physical copies available, I could see that being valuable later on as like a collector's edition or something. That would be the only reason they'd want to do that.
Well, that's another thing. This isn't the first time Nintendo's had a limited release. And it's not the first time they've had a limited release for an anniversary. They've had Mario anniversaries and Kirby anniversaries and stuff before where they released a limited release game. But then it was understandable because they were making a physical product. Mm-hmm. We're only going to make so many of these and then put this out there. We're not going to have a super long production run. That makes some sense. You have a limited supply, so you're putting your limited supply out there. But Nintendo didn't just do this for the physical copies of these games. They did it for the digital copies as well. You cannot buy Super Mario 3D All-Stars even in digital form now. And the Fire Emblem game, that was always only in digital form. Even if you bought the physical copy of the game, it gave you a download code for the digital copy. And Super Mario Brothers 35 was also digital only, but it was digital only in a way that required the online community, the online connection. So that one is just, like I said, completely unplayable.
Wow. And
Nintendo has technically replaced, quote unquote, replaced Super Mario Brothers 35 with the new release this month, Tetris 99. Mm-hmm. Which is a similar, Nintendo Switch Online exclusive. If you have access to Nintendo Switch Online, then you can play... did I say Tetris 99?
Yes.
Goof. Sorry. That's a goof. I meant to say Pac-Man 99. But if you have access to Nintendo Switch Online, you can play Pac-Man 99 for free. Again, free in quotes because you're still paying for the online subscription. But Pac-Man is not Mario. Those are two different games.
They are not.
And some people might prefer one over the other. I actually happen to be one of those people. I think they're both decent, but I actually kind of liked Super Mario Brothers 35. I think when I reviewed it, I gave it a C+, and that's because the game isn't without its issues, but I still enjoyed it. I still liked it. It's still something I would like to have gone back to from time to time, but now neither I nor anyone else has that opportunity.
Oh, well. I guess this will probably be a trend from Nintendo. Who knows?
Let's hope not, but I kind of suspect it might be. It worked for them this time, so why wouldn't they do it again? Unless they fear getting another backlash and the day Link dies or the day Zelda dies.
That'd be terrible. That would be so terrible.
Yeah, but they would have earned it if they do that. They know what they're getting into. If they do this again, then they deserve every bit of that as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. On to more lighthearted news.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, you showed me the Indie World Showcase.
Yes.
Which showed games like There Is No Game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge, which looks amazing.
It does.
I am looking forward to that. We also have Chris Tales, Getsufuma Den, Aztec Forgotten Gods, and Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals.
These are just a few of the games that I personally felt were highlights for me. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that these games are definitely going to be good. They're not out yet, and I do not pass judgment until I've actually gotten my hands on a game. But these are the ones that stood out to me. I don't know if there were any that I didn't list here that you felt were big standouts for you, but...
I am a little bit curious about Road 96.
Interesting.
I love the thought of choosing your own adventure, deciding which paths to take.
The funny thing is that one didn't super appeal to me, but one of the things that I'm hearing from a lot of people in regards to this Indie World Showcase is they did a good job making sure there was a little something for everyone in this one. People who are really big on the old school stuff. A lot of people latched onto TMNT, Shredder's Revenge.
And why wouldn't they?
Absolutely. It looks like they are doing a great job of honoring the tradition of the great old school Ninja Turtles games. Although technically this game was announced shortly prior to the Indie World Showcase. But they didn't specify platforms, and they didn't specify it would be on the Nintendo Switch. And when they revealed this game in the Indie World Showcase, they showed a lot of new footage that we hadn't seen before, and it looks so good. It looks like they are not just honoring like the classic Ninja Turtles arcade game, and Turtles in Time was the other big one at the time, but like all the character designs are clearly inspired by the old 80s cartoon rather than one of the newer versions of the franchise. And they're clearly going for that nostalgia. They put a lot of work into actually making sure that all of the 4 turtles have different animations that really express their personalities.
For real, though, when I saw that trailer, I was like transported back. So much nostalgia. Yeah,
that one does look promising, and it's being published, not developed, but published by, I don't know if I'm going to get this pronunciation correct, Dotemu or Dotemu or Dotemu. I don't know how it's pronounced. But these are the folks who brought us Streets of Rage 4, which was incredibly good. Just a really great sequel to a classic franchise. They also did, I think it was Monster Boy. It's either Monster Boy or Wonder Boy or one of those things.
Monster Boy sounds familiar, but...
basically, again, another kind of modern recreation of a classic franchise. So I feel like .emu or .emu, I apologize, I don't know the correct pronunciation. I feel like they're really making a name for themselves, doing a really great job bringing those classic franchises into the modern day. In regards to the rest of the Indie World Showcase, one of the other things that I've heard people commenting on is that this one really felt more than most of these like a very international showcase. You had developers from all over the world, and
France, Germany, Mexico, South Korea. That was great. I was very impressed by that.
I just say my personal standout from this, the one out of all of these that really turned my head, and I was looking at this and I'd never heard of this game before. Some of these games had been previously announced, like Chris Tales looks great, but they had previously announced that game. It still looks great. But Aztec Forgotten Gods really surprised me, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. Kind of a action game with a lot of kinetic movement and some what looks like it could be really good combat. So that's the one I'm probably looking forward to the most that I learned about in this Indie World Showcase.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, I'm looking forward to that too.
That's my top one. But anyway, so on to the next bit. Let's talk about some of the highlights for the games that eShopperReviews has covered in the month of April. keep in mind that these are not necessarily all the games released this month, but games reviewed in the last month. So the first one we can talk about, which I'm curious myself, is Super Mario 3D World Bowser's Fury.
Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury.
Really?
Yes. It's specifically plus Bowser's Fury because the Bowser's Fury section of the game is pretty much a completely new game that they've kind of latched on to Super Mario 3D World. Super Mario 3D World was originally released on the Wii U, and for the longest time, people kind of saw it as inevitable that this game would get ported over to the Nintendo Switch because, I mean, nobody bought the Wii U. So, they made a perfectly good game and released it on a game console that nobody played. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is the same story as Mario Kart 8, and Mario Kart 8 has gone on to be the best-selling game on the Nintendo Switch. So why would Nintendo not bring over another game that's sure to be a mega bestseller?
Right.
However, they could have gone lazy about it, and that was kind of what everybody was predicting, especially after they brought over other games like New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, which didn't have much different from the Wii U version, and they priced it at a full, I think, $60.
Ouch.
But it still sold. It still sold very well. They did the same thing with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. Again, pretty much brought the game directly over, added in a few tiny things, sold it at full price, a higher price than the Wii U version, and it still sold pretty darn well.
That's amazing.
It's a great game, but that price is ridiculous. So everybody was predicting that they would do the same thing when they eventually, inevitably, brought over Super Mario 3D World. And Nintendo surprised everyone by actually putting effort into it this time. And they added in this Bowser's Fury section to the game, which it's basically an entirely new game using the same game engine as Super Mario 3D World. They've made this new open world game. It's a small game. I don't remember how many, but it's definitely less than 10 hours. It's maybe somewhere between 4 to 6. I would need to check that. So it's small, but it does new things with the engine. Like I said, it's open world, so there's this free exploration that you didn't have in the level-based Super Mario 3D World. Mm-hmm. And it's very good. Like, a lot of people are saying I would be totally cool if Nintendo's next Mario game was basically just this expanded into a full 60-hour game.
Wow.
So, yeah, I was very pleased with it. And Super Mario 3D World remains a very good Mario game. It's not an especially ambitious Mario game. It's not on the same level as something like Super Mario Odyssey was. But it's kind of a nice halfway between stepping stone between the 2D and the more 3D games. So people who are used to games like New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, who were maybe a bit uncomfortable getting into the more free-roaming games like Super Mario Odyssey, Super Mario 3D World will be a nice introduction to that style of play because it's still a more simple game in terms of how you move and how the levels are designed.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, so Rain on Your Parade.
That was another one of my favorite games this month, and it was a bit of a surprise for me. That one actually did come out in April, but it had an early sale, and I was interested, so I gave it a shot. And this game, for those who are not aware of this, it has very strong Untitled Goose Game vibes.
Oh.
The idea behind this game is you are playing a rain cloud who is trying to ruin everyone's day. The very first level of the game is a wedding, to give you an idea. Mm-hmm. So you're going through the game and you are, raining down on people with water. You're using lightning to strike things. But the game actually has some really clever mechanics. You can suck up things into the cloud, and that changes what you're pouring down. So, for example, if there's an oil slick, you can go over to the oil, suck up oil into the cloud, and now you have a way to spread fires around.
Oh, that's so malicious.
It's delightfully I don't want to say sinister, because the entire game is very lighthearted. It's very family friendly. But it's
sinisterly mischievous?
It's definitely mischievous. Mischievous is the word that I would definitely apply to this. Very much like Untitled Goose Game.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't quite sinister, but it was mischievous. But they have some very clever puzzles in here. They do some very clever things with their goal design, where you're doing different things in different levels. Some levels are actually riffs on classic video games, which I will not spoil here because you should discover it for yourself.
Oh,
it's
that's adorable.
cute and clever.
Though. Yeah. Cute, clever, mischievous, a little bit sinister.
And the entire game is designed almost like a child playing with bits of cardboard and scraps from around the house, like, here comes the evil rain cloud pouring down on
that's so adorable.
Yeah, this was a delightful little surprise. And so funny. Not just funny because of all the mischief you're creating, but all the cute little jokes and cultural references in the game. It's pretty fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Okay, so this one I'm not familiar with. Olija?
This one was released earlier this year. It is an action game. It's a 2D platformer, which I know you're not a fan of.
Yeah, I suck at platformers. Unfortunately.
It's fine. I'll forgive you.
Uh-huh. You better.
Everyone has their own preferences, and that's fine. This one, the idea behind it is early on into the game, you get a spear, which or not a spear, a harpoon, which you're using to fling yourself around the level. You can hit enemies with it, or you can hit certain points in the level where you can pull yourself to that point. And it really adds this kinetic element to movement and combat throughout the game that's really fun, just zipping around and attacking enemies and stuff. One of the other things that this game does really well is it has this really dour, depressed tone that's seeping through everything. Like, even the strongest warriors in the game, a lot of them still sound tired and weak. Their voices are all croaky, which it just adds this great sense of hopelessness to the overall tone of this game.
I love how you're making depressing things sound wonderful for this game.
Well, I know not everyone's going to be into that, but there are some people, like people who love the Dark Souls games, where that adds just this kind of this feeling of personality to the game that not every game needs to be super cheerful, happy to be enjoyable, and it's nice to have that variety. And while you have some games that are super attacky, kill everything, you have some games that are super happy, jump around and have fun. This game has kind of a more subdued, somber tone to it, which is nice for that variety.
Okay. Do you want to talk about the worst games?
I can. So, I reviewed a lot of racing games earlier this month.
You did.
I had a racing game week. And suffice it to say, any game that has been released so far, I don't want to speak for games that come out later, but any game that has the words rock and racing in it should be thoroughly avoided.
That bad, huh?
Again, I don't like to crap on anyone else's work. I understand that people put time and effort into these. But all of the games that have the rock and racing brand affixed to them are... They just have issues with the controls, with the graphics. Not great racing games.
Okay,
I'll just put it like that. So,
aside from the not-so-great racing games, what was bad about Timothy and the Mysterious Forest?
Timothy and the Mysterious Forest is bad in an unexpected way, because if you look at screenshots of this game, it looks adorable. It looks endearing. It looks like this game very much wants to be Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening in a modern age. It has that same kind of look to it. It's very clearly mimicking that art style. This game looks like Legend of Zelda. It does not play like Legend of Zelda, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with a game playing in a different style, even though it looks like another game. The problem is, this is a game that's very stealth-based, and it's one of those stealth-based games where if you mess up, you're pretty much, you're out of luck. You need to go back to your last checkpoint, because the moment any monster touches you, you die. You're done for.
I mean, wouldn't some players like that? I mean, love that
some
about...
players will like anything, but I think most players will be really frustrated by this one early on. It's not just the high difficulty stealth. It's the way everything in this game is designed as if it is to punish the player. At one point fairly early on, you go to a game of chance. Again, something they do in Zelda. Hey, pick the right chest out of these 3 chests. And in Zelda, if you pick the right chest, you get a special reward, you get a special item or something. If you pick the wrong chest, then you get a single rupee to pay you back for the 20 that you spent or whatever. In this game, in Timothy and the Mysterious Forest, if you pick the right chest, then you get to play another round. If you pick the wrong chest, you die and go back to your last respawn point.
Oh!
Yeah, it is frustrating, and it is almost as if it is designed to be frustrating.
I mean, maybe some players are into that. I don't know.
I mean,
people play Dark Souls because of how hard it is.
Yeah, but there are games that are frustrating but rewarding when you get things right. With this game, it's just roll of the dice. Oh, you didn't get things right? Well, too bad. Now you go back to your last respawn point.
Is that the only criticism you have for that game? Was it being punishing?
It's not just punishing. It's punishing in ways that, like I said, are seemingly random at times.
And unfair.
And unfair, yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about the hidden gems then.
Okay.
Adventures of Chris.
Adventures of Chris was one that kind of surprised me. It has this dopey looking art style. It has a really, frankly, a name that just does not sound interesting at all. And the premise is really silly. You play this kind of, how do I say this politely? You play a somewhat overweight kid. And early on, this kid finds himself teleported to the lair of a kid vampire who transforms Chris into a walking, talking balloon, basically. He becomes a balloon boy.
Oh, that's so mean.
And he floats up to the realm of balloons, where the balloons magically heal his malady somewhat by allowing him to temporarily transform back into a human. Which ends up making him something of a superhero, and kind of an unlikely hero. But the premise behind the game is you're walking along and you can run and jump like a normal platformer, but you can also inflate yourself, which reverses gravity. And the game uses this in some interesting ways. Some of the mechanics here are really fun, and the world design has elements of the old Mega Man games, where every world kind of gives you a new ability that can be used in fun and interesting ways. And they're really creative about how they go about it too. Like, for example, Chris, being the kind of protagonist he is, he doesn't get a butt stomp like Mario. No, he gets a belly flop. And it bounces him around like a ball, and it's silly and funny and cute and inventive, and they do a really good job with incorporating this into the puzzle designs of the level and into the boss designs. And I thought the sense of humor here was great. The gameplay was inventive. This one was just a really good find, I thought.
Okay. Tell me about Hexologic.
So this month, one of the other theme weeks that I did was a puzzle game week. Mm-hmm. And out of all of the puzzle games I played, this one is probably the one that stood out to me the most. Which was kind of a surprise because it was kind of an unassuming little... I want to say, I think it's an inexpensive... It's definitely under $10. It might be under $5. I'd need to double check. But the idea behind Hexalogic is you have a bunch of hex-shaped tiles that need to be filled with numbers. And on the edges of these tiles, you have a total that line needs to equal up to. So you're trying to fill in all the tiles so that it equals all of the numbers on the edges based on, the angle that the number is on. Really simple premise, but the gameplay works out to have that same kind of feel as something like a Picross game or a Sudoku game, where you're trying to logic out where the numbers belong. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, this game has a really great presentation. It has really stylized, beautiful 2D graphics. It has some really nice music that shifts and changes as you progress through the game. It's just a really well-made little puzzle game that I wasn't expecting, which is a large part of the reason why I do this, is to find these games that I wasn't expecting to be that great, but hey, it's pretty great.
I mean, I haven't heard of either of these games that you've found as hidden gems. Tell me about Everhood.
Everhood is another game that was released earlier this year, and this game, the easiest way to describe it that does not do it justice, but it kind of starts you off on understanding what this game is like. It's like a cross between Undertale and Guitar Hero.
What?
So the idea is it has similar visuals and a similar presentation and a similar kind of sense of humor, a sensibility to Undertale. It's kind of sort of retro style, kind of slightly ugly, but not in a bad way, 2D graphics. But the gameplay is music rhythm based. You are on lanes. In every one of these battles, you're on lanes that you need to shift between. However, the catch here is I just compared this to Undertale and to Guitar Hero, and neither of these is quite appropriate because this game definitely does things that are very different from both of those. In terms of how it's different from Guitar Hero, for example, you're not trying to hit notes on the lanes. You're trying to avoid notes. The entire idea is you're dodging left and right as whatever opponent you're playing against is playing notes to try and, attack you. And as far as how it's different from Undertale, this game does things that... How do I even describe this? It has some weird fourth wall breaking psychedelic effects that play around with the gameplay. I don't want to spoil too much because it's really fun discovering some of this stuff by yourself, but you start out with a basic concept of what this game is, and for a little while it plays like that, but then it starts playing around with your perception of what this game is and what you're doing with it.
Okay, so it's a bit trippy.
It can definitely get a bit trippy, and the soundtrack in this game is really original. It's fantastic, and it doesn't... it tries to avoid any kind of predictability or anything like that. It's really unique and in a world of its own. Okay.
What about Descenders?
So Descenders might not quite be a hidden gem. It's more of a significant release, but I feel like it might have gone overlooked by a lot of people. Descenders is a off-road BMX, well, I shouldn't say BMX, it is an off-road biking game that has kind of roguelike elements in it where every level is randomly generated, and this is the one game on the Nintendo Switch so far that has done the best job of scratching my extreme sports gaming itch. That Tony Hawk I want to do stunts kind of gameplay.
I didn't know you actually like those games.
Love Tony Hawk. Tony Hawk is fantastic. And this game isn't quite on the same level as that, but it's not quite trying to do the same thing. You're racing to the end of a level. You're not necessarily trying to beat a time or beat an opponent, but you're trying to do so in a stylish way to earn rep points or something like that. Now, I will have to say, as a caveat, the Nintendo Switch version of this game suffered heavily for the port. The graphics are severely downgraded in multiple respects. The resolution, the frame rates, the textures, the level detail. In so many ways, this game looks so much worse than every other version of this game. So if you have multiple platforms and this game sounds interesting to you, and it is a really good game, it's fun, and it's fun on the Nintendo Switch as well, but if you have multiple platforms, maybe get this game on another platform instead if you have the choice.
You mean like on the PC?
I'm not sure if it's on the PC. I'd need to check. But yeah, whatever platform you have, if it is a decent modern gaming platform, Descenders is a wonderful game, but somewhat less
Switch.
Wonderful on the Nintendo Switch.
Okay.
It's still very good on the Nintendo Switch, and if the Nintendo Switch is your primary gaming platform of choice, it is still well worth getting this game on the Nintendo Switch. But if you do have a choice, I would say maybe lean toward getting this on another platform.
Okay. Noteworthy reviews for you.
Okay.
The first one you listed was Pac-Man 99.
Pac-Man 99, I think, is noteworthy specifically because Nintendo, whether they intentionally did this or not, I think they intentionally did this, positioned it as kind of the replacement for Super Mario Bros. 35, which we talked about getting ditched from being playable this month. Pac-Man 99 comes in, has a very same premise to Super Mario Bros. 35 and Tetris 99, which is you're playing a game of Pac-Man, but you're playing it competitively against 98 other players who are also playing Pac-Man. And when you gobble up ghosts in this game, it sends them over to other players. Well, it doesn't send ghosts, it sends what they call Jammer Pac-Man, which are little Pac-Men that, go around the level, and if you run into one, it'll slow you down and you might get caught by a ghost.
Oh.
And later on into playing, when you get toward the end of a match, it'll send over Red Jammer Pac-Man, which just automatically kill you if you touch them.
That's pretty cool.
It is, but I also felt like they did a very poor job of explaining to the player how the mechanics of this game work. I'm still not clear on when it decides to send over a Red Jammer Pac-Man. I still feel like it's frustrating that there's no way to clear those Red Jammer Pac-Man. If you get trapped between two of them, you're just trapped and there's nothing to do about it. Which is different than the ghosts, because with the ghosts, at the very least, you can eat a power pellet. Mm-hmm. And, classic Pac-Man game design where, you go up and you gobble the ghosts. If you gobble a power pellet and you go for one of those Red Jammer Pac-Man, you die. You lose.
Right.
I just feel like so much of this game, it feels like whether you win or lose seems up to chance or seems up to gameplay elements that are not really shown or revealed to the player, and that frustrated me. I still think it's a fun game, and if you have Nintendo Switch Online, you might as well download it because it's free for you. Oh, nice. Well, free in quotations because you need to subscribe to the service. But if you're already subscribed, then it's no extra cost. And it's a fun little unique multiplayer online take on the classic Pac-Man game that incorporates some elements of the Pac-Man Championship Edition series.
Okay. Bioland Wonderland.
Wonder World. A lot of people have been making that mistake.
Really?
Yeah, it really should have been called Wonderland because that just rolls off the tongue a lot more easily. Mm-hmm. But for whatever reason, they called it Balan Wonder World. And we talked about this game briefly in our last podcast. I had mentioned that they released a demo for it, and the demo did not go over well. People were not pleased with this. And I had not played this in time for our last podcast. I think it had just released. Mm-hmm. I have played it and reviewed it now, and suffice it to say, yeah, not good.
Why?
So, I don't think it's the worst game ever. A lot of people have been talking about this like it's the worst game on Nintendo Switch, or it's just so horrible. It's bad. It's very bad, let me put it that way. But it has some positive elements as well. But I think it's surprising how bad it is, given that this is coming from the creators of Sonic the Hedgehog and Knights, and these classic platformer games that kind of were the foundation of the genre. And you would think, after decades of experience making these types of games, after decades of these types of games to learn from, that two of the creators of one of the formative games of the genre, the creators of Sonic the Hedgehog, couldn't get a platformer right. And it's just, there's so many elements of this game that are wrong. The pacing is bad. Movement is super slow. When you go through the game, you collect different abilities that you can have 3 of at any given time. But each of these abilities only lets you do one thing. And this one thing replaces your basic jump.
Oh.
In a platformer, it is possible to get 3 abilities that make it so that it is impossible to jump. You can get stuck in a platformer by not being able to jump and need to get yourself damaged so that you can go back to your default form just so you have the ability to jump.
That's horrible.
In a platformer.
That's horrible.
And I do not hate this game. I try to emphasize this in games that I just don't have a hate on for, but that frustrate me and I recognize that they're bad. This game has some really nice elements to it. It is visually nice if you can ignore how graphically bad it is, if that makes sense. Like, the graphics on the Nintendo Switch version are not good. They're low resolution, and there's all sorts of really nasty aliasing. Some of the worst I have seen in a Nintendo Switch game. In fact, this may very well be the worst example of aliasing I've seen on the Nintendo Switch.
Yikes.
Aliasing, for those who are not aware, is when you get a kind of a stair-stepped effect to the graphics. When you have a diagonal line that doesn't look like a diagonal line, it looks like kind of this jagged, stair-stepped kind of thing. And everything in this game has that look to it. But if you can look past the graphical problems this game has, at the very least, the world design, the character design, the colorful nature of it is all appealing. It has that kind of classic, this looks like it was designed by the same person who made Knights on the Sega Saturn. It has that kind of feel to it. It has a nice charm to it. And there are some elements like this that shine through. I had some people on Reddit questioning me giving this as good a grade as a D+.
Wow.
And I understand people's frustrations with this game. Believe me, I do. Like I said, it is not a good game, but I do recognize that there are some positive elements in it, even if it's not a good game. It's just, I think people were really shocked and disappointed with, number one, with such a bad game coming from such a big name. I mean, Yuji Naka is a legend in the industry. But number two, that despite this game being this bad and looking this bad and seeming to have this low amount of effort, they still priced it at a full $60.
That's not good. Okay. No. Is it Bit Trip Games?
So there's a series of games that I reviewed this month. It came out late last year. The Trip Saga, as it has been called. And this includes... So they are, and this is not in order, this is just from what I can recall. So Bit Trip Runner is probably the best, most well-known out of all this group. And this is the one that got 2 sequels later on, Runner 2 and Runner 3. Runner 2 is not on the Nintendo Switch. Runner 3 is on the Nintendo Switch, and I've reviewed it previously. So there's Bit Trip Runner, Bit Trip Fate, Bit Trip Beat, Bit Trip Void, Bit Trip Core, and Bit Trip Flux. And I can't believe I didn't stumble over my words saying all of that.
Yeah. Interesting word choices for those games, though.
Well, each one applies to the style of gameplay that's within the games themselves. The Bit Trip series as a whole is unified by having a kind of similar style to the game. It has this kind of retro lo-fi feel to it. And also, all of these games have, to some extent or another, some element of music rhythm to them. So Bit Trip Runner, which is a auto runner style game, you're automatically running forward. When you are jumping over or dodging objects, that's to the time of a beat, and you're basically playing a song through your actions.
That's cool.
Bit Trip Fate, which is the least music rhythm out of all of these games, still has music rhythm elements. The premise behind this game is it is a two-stick shooter where you're moving through a level along a line that's already set. You cannot move outside of this line. And it's kind of a unique take on this style of bullet hell, sort of avoid the bullets and shoot back kind of game. With this one, the music rhythm element is after you shoot an enemy, they don't blow up until it's in time with the beat.
Oh.
Let's see. Another one that was kind of creative was Bit Trip Void, which is you're basically controlling a growing black hole where you're trying to suck up all of one color of dot that comes on screen and avoid all of another color of dot. It has a gameplay element where when you suck up dots of the correct color, your void grows, kind of like Katamari Damacy did this sort of thing. And at any time, you can press a button to shrink your black hole down to its small size, and you're trying to manage where it moves and its size so that you're sucking up all of the color that you want and not sucking up all the ones that you don't want.
Oh, okay. That's cute.
So those are some of the games in this series. Some of the ones in this series, like Bit Trip Flux and Bit Trip Beat, make use of motion sensing mechanics that I didn't care for as much. And then there's Bit Trip Core, which I didn't find the gameplay as enjoyable as some of the others in this series. So I'd say my highlights for the Bit Trip series are going to be Runner primarily, but also Fate and Void are very good, I thought.
Okay. We are going to take a short break, and then we're going to get to the patron submitted questions, which I am very, very much looking forward to. Welcome back, everyone, and now it's time for patron submitted questions. Anyone who donates to our Patreon gets a chance to ask us questions, which we answer in our podcast. And this month, our first question comes from Stove. He has a couple of questions. Which games are you looking forward to the most, Jake?
So I feel like I have to give the obligatory answer to this one that anyone with a Nintendo Switch is likely to say. To start with, I'm clearly looking forward to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2.
Yep.
However, I have to say that with the caveat that we haven't really seen the game yet. We've seen a cinematic part of the game. That's we don't even have a title for the game yet. We just know they're making a sequel, which honestly is enough to get me excited about it, because the first one was, well, still is arguably the best game on Nintendo Switch still to this day. Not going to say too much more about it because
there's really not much to say for now.
Exactly. However, as far as games that we have a little bit more information on, there are two specific games that come to mind, and maybe not what everyone might be thinking of, but firstly, I'm a huge fan of the Disgaea series, and Disgaea 6 is coming to Nintendo Switch later this year. A little iffy on the new art style. They're using a new cel-shaded art style for this game, but they have some new gameplay elements to this game that I'm really curious about. Like, they have one element that they're adding to this game where it sounds like you can basically create macros for your characters where they can move and act on their own and do their own thing, which, if they do it right, could make an interesting streamlined element for the design. And given how much time I've poured into this series, I'm sure that I'll be spending a good amount of time with this one. The other game that I'm looking forward to, and I know this is one you're looking forward to as well. I've heard you...
Maybe.
Maybe. Rune Factory 5.
Maybe.
Maybe. I really liked the previous Rune Factory game, which is kind of a bit like Stardew Valley with a little more focus on combat. You know, there's still a farming element to it, but you're also going into dungeons and fighting monsters, and that plays into the farming element really well. Rune Factory 5 is also coming out on the Nintendo Switch later this year, and they're making the full jump into 3D, and the game looks beautiful, and I cannot wait to get my hands on it.
I will be locked up in my bedroom playing this game.
Oh, so not maybe then. This is more like definitely.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for the farming games. I really am. Harvest Moon, wonderful. Stardew Valley, oh god, yes. Give me Rune Factory, give me Rune Factory.
This one we were both agreed on, yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Well, aside from Rune Factory, how about you, Jen? Any upcoming games you're looking forward to?
No, this question was for you, not for me. No.
Nope, too late. I've asked you. You introduced this by saying it's questions we're asking each other. So now I'm asking you. What are you looking forward to? You don't have to stick to Nintendo Switch. I know you're more of a PC gamer, so just go for broke. What is not out yet that you're looking forward to?
Overwatch 2.
Okay.
Because that is my bread and butter. I am looking forward to it because I have friends who are interested in Overwatch, but not the PvP aspect. So Overwatch 2 is going to bring in some more PvE related things. I'm hoping it will play like Vermintide 2, where it's kind of like this gauntlet that you go through with generated enemies that are already scripted, but then also you'll have like random modifiers come in, like maybe lava on the floor or...
So I will say, when Activision Blizzard, I think technically you need to call it that.
Yeah.
I mean, when it's a game like Overwatch, I tend to think it's just Blizzard, but it's Activision Blizzard. Mm-hmm. When they announced this game, it was kind of an interesting announcement. First of all, this game apparently is coming to Nintendo Switch. But second of all, the way they announced it made it sound like it was not necessarily a full and separate thing from the original Overwatch, but more like a continuation, like the original Overwatch is just going to flow directly into Overwatch 2. I wasn't entirely clear on how that's going to work.
I'm not entirely sure either right now. They've only given us a small glimpse of what's going to be in the game, but it's going to be coming out this year, so I am very ready.
That reminds me, there was one other game. Since we're talking about Blizzard, I have to mention, I am definitely looking forward to the remastered Diablo 2, which is also coming to Nintendo Switch and PC. Mm-hmm. But Diablo 3, one of the best multiplayer games ever made. And Diablo 2 is right up there with it, and I'm very much looking forward to being able to play that on my Nintendo Switch.
Surprisingly for me, at least for this year, I actually have more games I'm looking forward to on the Switch than I am on the PC.
Really?
Yes.
Well, what are you looking forward to other than Overwatch 2?
Pokemon Snap.
Okay, which by the time this podcast comes out will have already been released.
Yeah, and you probably won't see me for a little bit because I'll be in my bedroom playing Pokemon Snap. And Rune Factory 5, as we've discussed before. But yeah, those three are the big ones for me.
Right on.
Okay. Stove also wants to know, is there any interest in streaming on Twitch?
I don't know that I've ever had a particular interest in this. However, this makes a good opportunity, Jen.
For me to plug?
If you want to call it plugging, but I mean, so for those not aware, Jen actually does stream on Twitch.
I do. I don't do it consistently. But my husband and one of his closest friends Twitch quite consistently, and I basically play alongside them. If you are interested in me, my Twitch channel is twitch.tv/Zen_Ona916. I'll drop a link somewhere in the description. I mainly play Overwatch. Sometimes I stream World of Warcraft.
Oh, you're not talking about the thing you've been doing lately. Jen has been streaming herself getting scared and screaming a lot in Phasmophobia.
If you're not familiar with Phasmophobia, in a nutshell, it is ghost adventures with, the EMF readers, the spirit boxes, and the ghosts are real, and they can kill you. And classic horror game mode is it's dark and the only thing that you can see is a circle that is your flashlight. So I've screamed several times from this game and I keep coming back to it and I don't know why. No, I do know why. But my husband says it's content, so I'm like, okay, it's content.
You're doing it for the views.
Yes. But I am also going to be participating in Grand Theft Auto role-playing, which my husband has more or less forced me into.
Forced you into? There's a gun to your head, huh?
Gotta keep him happy too. So I already have a character chosen. I will be doing that shortly. I don't know how well it's going to go, but it's going to be fun.
So for those hoping that I might be doing some Twitch streaming, I'm not quite sure it's my sort of thing. I like to take my time with things.
I can probably make him.
But those who are interested in seeing some fun streaming, you can definitely watch for Jen's stuff to come up. She's amusing.
I scream a lot. Okay, Reddit user Wonder Ponder asks, what is your most played Switch game?
That's hard for me to pin down. I will say, if you added up all the time that I spent playing various Picross games, that would probably take the top. I like to play Picross and Sudoku games to relax. It's something that I find soothing and kind of helps me to just get into a nice relaxed state so I can go to sleep. I don't know if that makes me weird or not.
No, I don't think so.
Unfortunately, I haven't really found any Sudoku games on the Nintendo Switch that really clicks with me just yet. But there have been a lot of good Picross games that I've enjoyed. And lately I've been playing through the, what is it called? Travel Mosaics games. There's a series of, I think they're up to 7 or 8 now.
Nice.
I reviewed them all previously. They're all pretty near identical to each other, and the earlier games are less expensive, so if you get one of them, go for one of the earlier ones. I also played a lot of Pick-a-Pix Deluxe, which is more of a retro-styled kind of chiptune and pixel art style Picross game. However, if you're looking at just one game that has taken up a lot of my time, Disgaea 5 might be
called it.
That one. That's a game where you can pour literally hundreds of hours into it. There is so much to do. It is really good. It's a grindy type game. You spend a lot of time grinding. And to be clear, grinding can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. It really depends on the game. It depends on whether if what you're doing repetitively is fun. If the grind itself is fun, then grinding is not a problem. If the grind is tedious and boring, then that becomes a problem. And for me, the Disgaea games are like a wonderful, wonderful drug that I just keep coming back to.
Do you know what my most played game is? You want to take a guess?
World of Warcraft?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You want to know what I mainly do in that?
Talk to people?
Well, talk to people, but also the grind. The grind for loot.
Yeah. So, there is one other game that I've spent a ton of time on, and I don't really think about it as much when this question comes up. I had to actually take a moment to remind myself, because I haven't played it a lot lately. Because of the pandemic, I just haven't had many people to play against, which is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I love my Smash Brothers. I love it so much, and I love playing against people. But the online, as I'm sure any Smash fan will tell you, is a mixed blessing. It's not horrible, but it's not great. This is a great game to play in person if you have other people of a comparable skill level to play with, and I just don't. And that's not because I'm saying that Jen is terrible at Smash Brothers.
No, I am.
No. Don't get me wrong. Jen is terrible at Smash Brothers, but that's not the reason why. No, the reason why is that I've never competed in a professional tournament or anything like that for Smash.
But you should.
But I have played against tournament level players, and I can hold my own. So finding someone with that level of skill during a pandemic, I haven't really been able to play this game so much. And it's a pity because I've been getting all of these new DLC characters as they're released. Nintendo just recently released Pyrrha and Mithra from the Xenoblade games on Smash. And I played around with them a bit. I like them. They seem fun. I liked playing around with Sephiroth. Wasn't a big fan of Minecraft Steve. I like the character, I like the game, I just don't like his mechanics in Smash. But it's like I haven't really had the chance to really get good with any of these characters because I haven't felt the need to play the game all that much because I don't have anyone to play with at the moment.
Can I just say, flex? You're flexing? Flexing? Jake is flexing?
Not intentionally, I'm just...
I mean, you're good. You're good at that game. It's frightening.
I'm sure there are others who are... Well, I mean, I've never played in a tournament, so I'm not sure if I can say I'm that level of good.
Okay,
but...
fine. Next question.
Okay.
Favorite snack to eat while you play? And that comes from Wonder Ponder.
I don't generally eat snacks while I play.
I do. It's bad for my keyboard, but I do.
Well, what do you eat?
I often eat my meals at my computer because I like to watch Twitch or something on Netflix. So anything from the usual burger and French fries to sometimes I'll eat pasta.
I don't know that.
Oh, Alexa, you're great.
That's really nice.
The eShopperReviews podcast, guest starring Alexa. So for me, I have been on a ketogenic diet for the last few years. It's worked pretty well for me. I'm also doing intermittent fasting, which means that I only have a limited window in which I eat in any given day. But even before I had these self-imposed dietary limitations, I don't tend to eat while playing video games very much because I don't like the food to distract me from the game, and I definitely don't want to get my controller all messy because my hands are in stuff.
I have noticed your Joy-Cons, which you have a lot of, Jake, they are fairly clean, unlike my mouse and my keyboard.
Now, I do like to eat while I'm watching movies or sometimes while I'm at the computer, just relaxing. But those can be more passive and don't require as much interaction. And usually when I eat while I'm doing that, I'm not snacking, I'm having a full meal.
Okay. So our final question is, what's your play style? On the couch, handheld, docked, in bed?
I generally prefer to play my Nintendo Switch docked. Part of the reason why is, even though Nintendo Switch is technically a handheld platform, I think it is just a bit too big and too bulky and heavy for me to feel like this is a true handheld for me. Granted, you can bring it wherever you want, and that's great, and people do that, and people enjoy that, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I'm used to, the days of the Game Boy, the Nintendo DS, and those platforms, and those actually fit in your pocket, which the Nintendo Switch for me does not. I've not gotten a Nintendo Switch Lite yet, which I might consider at some point, but for me, a large part of the reason to play the Nintendo Switch is to be able to dock and undock it, to take it with you, to put it down the dock and play on your screen. And not being able to do that with the Nintendo Switch Lite was kind of a deal breaker for me.
Mm-hmm.
I hold out hope that this mysterious possible Nintendo Switch Pro that people keep talking about, but which we don't even know if it exists or not, I hope that at some point we might see a revision to the Nintendo Switch or the Switch Lite, which will let you dock something that has the same small size, low weight, and small form factor of the Lite. But currently, since I can't do that, I don't feel comfortable bringing it with me on the go, especially because it's such a big, bulky device that costs $300.
Yeah.
I do not want to risk dropping that because it's heavy and bulky and it hitting the floor and, oh, now I need to buy a whole new Nintendo Switch.
Mm-hmm.
As for what my play style is, it depends on the game that I'm playing. If I'm playing a more relaxed game, an RPG, or a puzzle game, I might like to lean back and just get all relaxed with it. If I'm playing a game that involves more active input, an action game, Smash Brothers, something like that, then I tend to sit forward and lean forward, show that really bad video game player posture that we've made so famous.
Oh, yeah, guilty of that as well. I don't normally play on my Switch. But if I do, I did play Breath of the Wild docked mostly, but I did play it quite consistently in bed too. Not docked, just handheld.
One of the great things about Breath of the Wild is it kind of caters to both play styles. Like, there are parts of that game where you're just walking around, exploring, taking in the beauty of the scenery, solving puzzles.
Exactly.
And those can be very nice and slow-paced, but the battles in that game, if you want to get into a battle and you head into the fray, can get really intense and really require a lot of precise timing. And so there's some good variety in that caters to both.
So that's it for our user-submitted questions for this month. If you'd like to have your question read aloud on this podcast, donate any amount on our Patreon page and submit a question on our monthly call-out, and we will bring it up in our next podcast. And that wraps things up for this month's eShopperReviews podcast. Again, we want to thank all of our patrons on Patreon for contributing. Patron donors are the first ones to gain access to these podcasts, and if you are interested in becoming a donor, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/eShopperReviews. And once again, if you're curious to read any of the reviews or content mentioned in this podcast, you can find it on the eShopperReviews subreddit at reddit.com/r/eShopperReviews. Once again, this has been Jen
And Jake McNeil.
We'll see you next month, and in the meantime, we both hope you found this content helpful and enjoyed some good games. Catch you next time.
Later.